Okay. Are we good to go, Robbie? Okay. So good morning, everybody. My name is Aaron Hamilton. I'm the operations manager with Ts'ubaa-asatx, which is a small nation on Vancouver Island to the west of Duncan, between Cowichan tribes, Duncan and Dididot or Nitnat on the west coast. The overall population in Lake Cowichan is about 3,500 people around the lake, and for the nation, we have about 25 people. What I'd like to do today is sort of give a bit of an overview of it really doesn't matter the size of the nation. It's a matter of when you put your plan together, it's about how you structure it and how you communicate to your community and how you sort of rally together around the champion the positives that you can sort of outweigh any other instances that come up to you. Go ahead, Robbie. Sorry. One more. There. So, but too far. So we started this process. I came over to this community about in 2011. So that's about 11 years ago now, just shy of 11 years. And when I came over, it was a to be quite honest, it was a struggling nation. We had to correct a few things, and one of the major things that we did is started to embark on planning and governance and policies to try and make sure that we have a clear footprint going forward. When we did this, community engagement was critical and essential. So, community engagement right down to your talking to your elders, talking to your co-staff, to your consultants that are working for you, right down to the youth. And as you can see in the picture there, we engaged youth at a very high level. Like they were involved all the way throughout. Some of the planning components that we did was CCP planning. That was we didn't have a plan at the time. That was one of the major undertaking, and some of these sort of came as a sort of underneath that. So when we did CCDP planning, we looked at land use planning for our whole general reserves and our overall traditional territory as well. We did policy review and development, like I just spoke of. We did work plan reviews to restructure what people's areas of expertise and focal points will be for staff. We did economic development planning to sort of do some crystal ball, sort of what do we wish and how do we want to overcome sort of our dependency on government funds. We also looked at community energy planning. This is going back, like this is in the early 2000s, so this is quite a ways away, and we got some really great baseline data out of that to help where we're going now. And we also looked at emergency planning, which has helped shape a few things that we've been working on. Concurrent to that, yeah, go ahead, Rob. Concurrent to that was program review. So we looked at the federal programs and services we're currently getting, and sort of did a baseline to see what was lacking and what was working, what wasn't working. We looked at provincial opportunities and other funding streams. So basically setting up the baseline for our financials on how we're gonna do all this. So, I know a lot of nations, I've worked with nations for over 20 years now. A lot of the biggest challenges is where do we get the funding? And at one point, I know there's a lot of great programs out there now, but at one point, it was either BC Capacity Initiative or PNID money. And that was basically, in a nutshell, what you had to plan with. So, we really tried to be creative and really started crystallizing this overall structure of how we're going to do it. Another really key component was having allies in our backyard. So looking at local municipalities and forming those relationships with the town of Lake Cowichan, which is right next door to us. Our lands border each other. We didn't have a very great relationship at the beginning. It was actually quite toxic based on water and sewer services that were being provided and disagreements with that. But we got some funding through UBCM and the First Nation Summit to do a community protocol agreement, and we did that, and we championed that with the mayor and council and the chief and council that we had at the time, and it was really, it really put a focus on. It's amazing how many communities don't get to even to this day, there's still a lot of communities that don't get that interaction with their local municipalities. And it's actually been a blessing for both parties, all three parties. There's actually the Cowichan Valley Regional District as well. It's been a blessing for when we put proposals in together, how to jointly manage stuff, how to come together as a collective, and how to really have a harmonious relationship. The other two components was local business interests that we've always kept an eye on, and have had extensive relations with some of the major developers in the area and other nations as applicable. So what we've tried to do with other nations is we take the politics out of it. It's about, how do we coexist, as opposed to drawing lines on a map and saying this is ours and that's mine. Really try and look at positive solutions, how to come together and work with one another. So when we look, this is our reserve map here. We have 100 acres. Sounds like a lot until you start looking at what's on the land. On the high, so see, we have two roads. How we're like every other reserve almost. Affectionately, there's always roads or railways that go through your lands when it's a reserve. We're no different. We have a highway. We had an old rail grade that was decommissioned and they transferred the land back to us, and we have another road at the south end of our reserve. Those roads are great, but they're also a deterrent. They actually prevent some of the key developments that we could have done, but they are what they are, and we adapt from it. So on the high side, on the north or the top end of the reserve, that's all very steep hill. It's treed for the most part, and it's a lot of rock. So it's a challenging site to do anything with for construction wise. But when we did our community energy planning, we're looking at potentially still might do it if panels come down, some solar on the high side there on the hill. We then broke it up into zones, so you can see in the sort of beigeish color or peach color, that's sort of our community core. That's sort of where our future housing for our membership will be. Excuse me, our future administrative building and some trails and other amenities. We've actually, it's kind of got a bit cloudy that we're actually doing some residential development that are for profit in and around that area. But then we got into the two key zones on the southwest of the map there. Those are our primary areas for economic development. So you can see, from 100 acres, you get down to, you're looking at maybe 15 to 20 acres tops that you can maximize it. And we really had to maximize what we could do with what we had. So these three terms here, the second one we got to take out, that just changed recently, but Ts'ubaa-asatx Ventures was a kayak and paddleboard rental business, and we'll see that on future slides. The health and wellness center, we've scrapped that. We've actually just twinned the size of our admin building. We were actually going to do a joint venture with Island Health to do a sort of health hub out here for the whole area, not just for our members, but for the whole area. But we're doing the Cowichan District Hospital, and that sort of took a priority, which we totally understand. And North Shore Estates, which is our residential development that we're a land code operational nation that we've entered into 110-year leases with 26 lots to date, and there's about 15 that are being built right now. Go ahead, Robbie. So Ts'ubaa-asatx Ventures, there's my shameless plug, ts'ubaa-asatx.com. There's the website. It literally started off as 8 kayaks and 4 paddle boards and a 16-person fiberglass canoe. So we got some funding through our Aboriginal business cohort. So Talahout Economic Development Corp gave us a loan. We did that. We built a temporary structure to house the rentals and a gift shop for the first 3 to 5 years. And that sort of has stood the test of time. And we've also, this is where we've, there's a major festival that, prior to COVID, there's a major festival that happens out here that attracts about 30,000 people on any given night, called Sunfest. We've partnered with the owner there to do joint opportunities, and we're anxious to get that back happening next year. knock on wood, that we don't go through any more waves of this COVID nonsense. But we've been able to reach an agreement where we'll partner with them. We recently have expanded. We have now 20 kayaks, 10 paddle boards, 4 canoes, and not the 16-person canoe, but four-person canoes and 2 water bikes. That expansion was literally off community demand and tourism demand. But the key point here is that it was laid out in our CCDP, 5 years prior to even launching this. Like, it was laid out and the community endorsed it. So it really made it easy to just sort of keep proceeding with this, with that assurance that we have the community and are, supporting it. We've now added a 20 by 20 longhouse, a mini longhouse to the site that sort of houses our cultural and meeting needs. And we have a permanent washroom facility there now. So it's literally has taken on as the gateway business for the nation, even though it's a smaller business and it's not necessarily there to generate a huge amount of cash flow. It provides, entry level training, and it gets our presence out there to the greater community. The next item was the Health and Wellness Center. We can skip this one, Robbie. My apologies. I should have got that on there. What we did on North Shore Road, on that road one of the roads that intersects our land, instead of, we had pleaded with the Ministry of Transportation for safety improvements and a trail access for our community members to have a safe area to walk to the lake to swim and recreate. Again, this is just pointing back to how critical it is to have a plan that backs it up, because governments and other funding agencies look for that plan to sort of see that you're not just doing it on a whim, I guess, for lack of better words. So we did a Ts'ubaa-asatx Trails and Walkway. We, back in 2009, 10, I guess 11 really, we put in a request for a walkway project, and it took a few years, but we got approved from the government, and we did a pedestrian safety walkway along that whole 1.5 kilometer stretch along the road. It's a fairly notorious local road that a lot of people speed by, and our safety of our kids were of paramount concern. When we designed this, though, this is the coolest part. We designed it with the community. The community literally helped design it. So they had about 4 options put in front of them. And they did pick the one that you can sort of see in the picture. And my apologies, I was trying to keep the slides to be a reasonable size, so we're not doing 80 megabytes. But we have that design there now with a raised curb, and it's fairly open. But then the community added this really wicked viewing platform. So the viewing platform on the bottom, it literally looks just like that, and it goes out into the lake. So you actually get a viewing platform that you can walk out onto the lake, and you actually can see a panoramic view of the lake, which is phenomenal. There's nothing else like it on the lake. One of the cool parts about this is that by doing this, just off of safety as the paramount feature, we've enhanced this now. So Melanie, who's not on the call right now, is taking the lead. We've added banner poles. So they're huge aluminum banner poles that sort of can have, right now it has different wildlife on it. It has elk, bear, wolf, eagle, and I'm missing one. I apologize, but it's got those all on there, and they can be interchanged. So we're going to start doing, every year we're going to start doing different, we'll have in memorial of our previous elders. We can have big banner poles and pictures of our previous elders. We can do some advertising for next phase of our residential development. We can do a whole whack of things. And we've also added solar lighting along that whole walkway to light it up. So just really cool that we've been able to transform something that was such a it's not a huge, it's not by no means is an economic driver, is more of an infrastructure project that the community need, but we've enhanced it and we've added our own flavor to it. One other piece that's kind of interesting with this is now our neighboring municipality wants to extend this for a longer term walkway that's going to go over. We're doing a new weir, or the the town of Lake Cowichan is doing a new weir crossing the lake. They want to include a pedestrian overpass so you walk and then extend to make this more of like a 6 to 10 kilometer walkway. So it's really cool to be a nation taking the lead doing this, and now we are ahead of the neighboring municipality and they're looking at us for options and support to go forward. So by planting the seed, we did that. It was a strategic move. Helped our public safety, but we also wanted to encourage it. If we start it, the town almost has no other option because all the local residents want it extended. So we've almost forced their hand in a positive way. It's all been very positive. So go ahead, Robbie. So then our next item was North Shore Estates, and northshoreestates.ca. That's, you can check out the website. It's really started as a treed railway that was returned back to us. It was an abandoned rail line. The middle picture on the bottom, there's the excavator. He's pretty much on the old rail grade there, and it was all second, third growth, maple, alder. There was really no, unfortunately and fortunately for us, there's no significant cultural trees, which was a good thing. And we did all our cultural assessment on the whole line. And there was nothing that was disturbed, thank God. But we've transformed this whole area into a major economic venture for the nation. It is, federal government was so nice to give us these reserves, but we only have so much opportunity we can do with it. And what we're doing is maximizing our potential for our next generation. When we did our CCDP and then we did an update to it in 2017, we're actually just doing our 5-year review and a new plan currently as we speak, actually. Well, not right now, but we're in the midst of it. When we did the update in 2017, it was very clear that we needed to look at these lands as our only opportunity to sort of get out of the dependency cycle. And it was a hard discussion. This is our only waterfront lands. We calculated how many people are moving home, what's the likelihood of moving home. And then we found an interesting compromise. Leadership actually decided to keep 1 lot per phase of each development. So the first development had 26 lots. We kept one of those lots for the nation. So as each development goes on, we're going to keep a lot so that there's always an opportunity for one of our members to reside. And we're not giving up the farm, for lack of better words. Concurrent to this is a 28 berth marina that we have right across the street that we were able to get court funding from ISK. So we did 28 berth marina. We're actually twinning that next year, so it'll be 56 berths. And the first 26 lots of North Shore Estates sold out in January, February of this year. We're sort of riding this sort of red hot market of housing right now. And they're, like I said earlier, they're 110-year lease structures that are happening. We are the taxation authority. So because we're land code and we're First Nations financial management members as well, we have the taxation authority. So we're trying to look at 4 streams of revenue. So we did the sale of the lots, or the lease, I should say. Then we did the taxation, and then we're doing an upcharge on the water and sewer that's provided as well. We got through the municipality. And then on the next phase, we're looking at 63 lots right now. It's right next door to this. And we're in active construction right now. We're going to be, we found a joint venture, and we're going to be partnering on the build. So that'll be the 4th stream of revenue. The biggest part of this is really looking at the long term. The taxation is what's going to be the sort of the consistent flow of revenue and the guaranteed cash flow. And we're looking at that for the next generation. I'm a visitor here. I have 3 kids that are members here. My wife's a member here. I'm a visitor, but leadership and myself and all staff are really just about how do we make sure the next generation has a lot of what we didn't have by using proper planning and proper techniques to make sure we realize it. Okay, we can go to the next one. So here's another aerial view of what North Shore Estates and the marina sort of looks like. So we've done extensive planning. So we had our CCDP. Another critical component though is that for each project we do another plan on top of that plan. So we had this zoned. If you were to go back, don't go back, but if you went see it, remember the slide that was there earlier, we had it zoned as sort of residential and sort of commercial. We took this back in March 2019 and defined it at what residential mix would be utilized, and we shared this to the community as well. So again, more sometimes you can overshare, but sharing them at critical times is critical to make sure that projects move forward. We couldn't do all this with if we had even a few members that were quite upset about it. We tried calming all like I said earlier, a lot of people were concerned about giving up the waterfront. Well, we've preserved a good chunk of that as community space forever. We sort of split it off and have a guaranteed space that they'll have. But we've also tried to bring harmony to it too, and sort of allow integration of other non-members and members so that we're all one community. And what we're trying to do and try and lead the way on this is to have a I know in other nations, the residential component like this, when you do long-term leases, is on a whole other reserve or it's a whole other area. We are literally integrating everyone almost together, and it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know how it's going to work. I'm very anxious to see how it works. We've got some really cool people that are moving in that are very responsive, very want to be part of the community, but it's new. And it's new to this community. It's going to be very interesting to see where it goes. Like I said earlier, there's the marina, and I have some costs on what everything was on an average lot, and et cetera, et cetera. That's just North Shore Estates lingo. Don't need to go into that for planning, but I mean, it just really highlights, the level of depth that nations need to be aware to go into once you start getting projects that are getting realized out of your community plan. All these all started with just 12 to 20 of us sitting around a dinner table after dinner, sort of saying, hey, what do we want to see out here? What does everyone want to see in their community? It was that generic. It was literally that simple. We didn't have bells and whistles. We didn't have anyone do this big feasibility at the beginning. A lot of this was literally generated from our own people. And then we fact checked it. Then we did the feasibility. Then we started doing the topography to see what would work. Then we had our engineers look at the soil context and see how everything is, to see where it goes. I think there's only one more after this, Robbie. I think I might be almost just right on time.
There are no worries, Aaron. Actually, you have another half hour. That's just for the other support organizations. So we're good till 11:40.
Okay.
No pressure.
No pressure. Okay. We can go on the next one. So one of the other things I just want to highlight, and I know it's got a lot of economic development tinge to this, but it is a key component of your comprehensive community plan. And I know a lot of challenges other nations have, my own nation included in Port Alberni. To implement your plan costs money, and I know that's always the biggest challenge. And it costs resources, not just money, but resources, time, staff time, and buy-in. You need community buy-in. By no means is this perfect. I'm not saying that we had always 100% buy-in. There's always going to be struggles. There's always going to be differences of opinion, but you really have to proceed with a consensus base. And if unfortunately, sometimes if majority rules, and as long as it's within the confines of what your guidelines are, you run with it. So one of the cool things that we've been able to do with some of the benefits that we've been able to get out of some of this is invest in our culture, invest back in culture. And for our nation, one thing that we did, I'll just do a bit of a sidebar here. When we did the protocol agreement with the town of Lake Cowichan back in 2015, we did we wanted to do a gift, and one of our consultants that was working with us wrote a letter to the town saying, well, there's nothing named after Ts'ubaa-asatx, our traditional name, Ts'ubaa-asatx, not like we used to be Lake Cowichan First Nation, but everyone started confusing us with Cowichan tribes and others, and so we got our identity back, and Ts'ubaa-asatx was our name. So the town at the time, one of the council members said, well, we're doing this new $1.5 million town square by the library. How about we name it after Ts'ubaa-asatx? And that was a big deal to us. So they actually named it Ts'ubaa-asatx Square. And my late father-in-law, who was the hereditary chief here, he turned to me in a meeting. I said, so how are we going to reciprocate that? Are we going to, do you want me to get a print, like a plaque, or? And I kid you not, he said, no, I want a pole. And I thought he meant like, a 12-foot, maybe not even 12, a 3-foot pole that you can get from a gift store. And he said, no, we're going to give him a pole to put in the middle of that square. And that's sort of the ingenuity that sort of helps, and the creativity that helps plans come alive. So what happened was a fundraising campaign. We had no funding, but we got a pole. We got a 20-foot totem pole that's erected in front of that town square, and that, thinking outside the box just really helps showcase how that relationship can be critical. How that all comes about to where we're at in this now, that reawakened our culture. Doing that whole poll, the artist that was doing it helped us learn our language, learn our some song and dance again, and made regalia. The whole community bought into that, and the whole community came together to celebrate song and dance that they haven't done in over 80 years. It was phenomenal. We kept that going. From that, struggled when the late chief passed away in 2017. It was it was a struggle, and but we started doing some of our traditional weaving, grass weaving, cedar weaving, and drum making, shawl making, and carving workshops, all in the longhouse. So that longhouse has really become this sort of beacon where we can sort of do a lot of things. We also did a memorial pole, a second pole. So we have 2 poles in Lake Cowichan now, and one's on our land and one's at the square. And this was carved by descendants that's not a member yet, but he's got blood to our community. Awesome young man, and he's actually working on another pole in town now, so we'll have 3. And it represented our connection to air, water, lands, earth, and spirit world. And it paid respects to those that have left before us. So really, that waterfront now has this whole other sense of meaning when people go down there. And then the last thing that we carved, we're almost done carving a 20-foot canoe. It said spring 2020. COVID got in the way. It'll be ready next spring. And we've digitized the process that we can do a video to show it being made. So it's made to be a teaching reference. So by doing all that, like, I can't help but keep stressing, I know it sounds like a broken record, but with the CCDP, it really sets the bar. It gives you that overarching plan, and everything sort of, I'm trying to feel this all out, have this all fit into, all these fit into that in different categories. And I'm trying to show how by doing that and sticking to your plan, you actually can see a lot of progression. I want to highlight too that this has all been done in the last 5 years, not even 5 years. It's aggressive, it's crazy, it's some days you're at the seat of your pants and you're like, what are we doing? But without that nervous energy, you need to harness that energy and put it to good use. And this is sort of what can happen. I don't want to keep belaboring it. I've been taught not to say it too many times, but we're only a nation of 25 total members. Like, we don't have 80 more off reserve. That's it. And the whole message in that is that your size does not dictate what you can do in a plan. All you need is one person to come up with a plan. And when you have more than one, guess what? You work as a team. I always say Microsoft didn't start off with 10,000 employees or 30,000 employees. It started off with 2 people and an idea. Apple, same thing. All these companies, they all start off with just an idea. And at the crux of it all with the CCDP, it starts off with an idea of, really, what do you want your community to look like? That's usually one of the fundamental questions that you do in a planning process. And honestly, if you keep going, you'll attract the right people as a team. We have a good consortium of consultants that work with us that have bought into that concept, bought into our overall plan and where we want to go. And yeah, it's been phenomenal. I think there might be one more, Robbie. I'm not too sure. I guess that goes in the next step. So we are getting other through different agreements with the province and with the federal government. We are looking at getting other lands, a total of an extra 120 acres. One's across the lake and one's adjacent to us. Only reason I keep this in here is it just highlights that we're going to be doing a CCDP on each one of those as well. Basically, they get their own different land holding, different area, different constraints, different challenges. But we really start at the baseline again and ask, and we go right back to the community and say, and we've done some of that pre-work. Like we've had the one rendering shows some campsites and that. We did that 3 years ago without even knowing we were going to get the lands. We started talking about, well, what would you want to see on there, so that we start getting that baseline data, so we're not losing track of what the community needs are. As I highlight all this great economic development that so awesome and all this stuff, you can get lost in that, and you can get lost in that world and start forgetting about culture, forget about trails, green space. You can all of a sudden go all in, and all of a sudden you've created a concrete jungle which has no real inkling of who you are. So it's always critical to sound back. COVID's made it a challenge, even though we're all pretty much one family unit down here. It still made it a very challenging time to communicate. We've had to do a lot of this and a lot of Facebook posts, and not so much in person. We had a few good sessions in the summer when cases relaxed, but yeah, we just keep punching on. Let's see if there's one more, Robbie. I think that might be it.
Yeah, that's it there.
Okay. So open to any questions. There's no, I'm as open as I can be. I try and keep all comments to just, I'm an open book. There's nothing complex about what we've done. We've pretty much followed the CCTV guidelines to a T. And then we've modified as required, as the nation's required to.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron, for sharing those inspiring examples of what's possible when starting with community and going from there, and everything kind of falls into place. Even if you're muddling through, it feels like it. So yeah, open to any questions or comments. If folks want to just take off mute, put into the chat, feel free.
I'll just put on there too. If my email, I don't know if my email is on my bio, but if you look at our website, if anything comes up after this, or if you're doing more work, like I said, I'm always willing. I just want to see other nations succeed. That's my main goal in life, is that, I've grown up in my community and we've struggled. I've grown up in the struggle. I know what it's like to go through it all. As a parent of 3 kids and 1 grandchild, I try and make sure that they don't have to go through, try and prevent, like every parent, try and prevent the same struggles, but just try and do good practices. I think any nation can look at what's possible, and all no matter where you're located, we're located in, like, Lake Cowichan used to be like a camping area only. Like that was it. And it's a logging town. So to be able to transform all this, it's not, we're not outside the big metropolitan area. We don't have the luxury of having, 1 million people next door to us, or 500,000 or 100,000 or even 50,000. You just sort of, you go with what you have. And even when you're in a remote area, people like to be out in remote areas. So anything is possible. And I think it's critical. It starts with planning. And I know that's what this whole workshop's about. And I know sometimes the community planners don't get their fair respects on all the work that goes into it. You literally almost have to be a Jack or Jill of all trades. You have to know a little bit about everything when you're doing a plan. You can't just forget about health, or you can't forget about where does education fit into all this. And I know in my slides I don't have that, but we had to factor all that in, right? So how many people are going to move back? What's your housing supply going to look like? Like there's a million things that go into planning. Like I said, trails, green space, you name it. Just a quick comment before I sign off, then, I guess, is I highlighted youth earlier, and one of the coolest things, we were looking at putting a restaurant down our waterfront at one point before that became unfeasible. But we were doing this big plan. We had our engineers, we had our architect, we had chief and council, we had all the adults in the room. There's about probably 35 of us at a dinner meeting, and we had broken out into the back room, had all the pictures, had all the technology there. Yeah, everyone's good. Yeah, we're all good. We're gonna go on this. Yeah, literally 11th hour. My daughter, who was probably 10 at the time, she goes, where's everyone gonna park? And I kid you not, we got so blinded by the fancy architect, by the what the restaurant will be, and none of us looked at parking. Not one person. And I mean, there was parking, there was like 5 stalls, but that would not make it feasible for a restaurant. And a 10-year-old said that. So I always highlight that, our youth are getting, they're so far ahead of in their thoughts and what they're exposed to. And they're just so much far ahead than where I was at 10 years old, that, just, I always think it's critical to not overlook even a 5-year-old. I mean, it's important to hear everyone's voice, and, pay respects to our elders and hear their voice. They've sort of, they're the ones that have lived through everything, right? So it's always critical that, every voice counts. And I always like to highlight that one, because at such a young age, we're like, what the heck? Sarah, I just see here, did you hire consultants? I missed that. Let's see. From no, so good question. So we did, so that's sort of where I came through earlier. So we did hire, we had a few firms that came in that helped do some of the plan, like do the legwork of the planning. We did have 2 members that were sort of the community contacts, and then, myself sort of project managing it and sort of, screening it for content, making sure that what we said gets in there and bring it back to the community. So sort of doing that community engagement piece, I took that on early on, and just to make sure that we had leadership and our community really getting their voice in there. But when we meet our consultants that come in, we're fairly straightforward with them at the get-go. And we're not a confrontational nation necessarily, but we put it out there on paper right away when we meet with them, like, hey, here's what our expectations are. And I think it's really critical, to lay that out with planning. I know I won't say any nations' names, but I know of a few nations on the island that seem to have been planning forever. And that's another dangerous thing, is that if you don't have an end site, you can be planning and planning and never getting any implementation. I think it's critical that, you take a year, maybe it's 18 months, but that should be I think that should be the extent of your plan. That's exhaustive. Like, that's a lot of work to get that done. You really, really, really need to figure out an implementation plan. Otherwise, it does live on a shelf and it does gather dust, and it becomes, unfortunately, that leadership's or that staff person's plan, not the community's plan. It's really the community that's done all the work. And try and when community participates, and if you have a committee, like, pay your committee. Like, I've been in other nations where it's all volunteer work. Like, what, people are volunteering their time on 18 other different things, on sports, on whatever. I mean, recognize, and that's what we try and do. You don't have to pay them an arm and a leg, but just do a recognition. And a lot of times it's not about the money, it's about the recognition that they receive, and stand them up and applaud them when you adopt a plan or when you're doing updates to it. I just can't help but stress that enough. Like, people, especially our people, they need to be recognized when they do a lot of work. And a lot of times, I've been guilty of this in the past. I think we just take advantage of that. And I think we need to slow down a bit and just say, hey, him or her or they've done all the work. Acknowledge that. Like, it's amazing what that does to someone's, mental health and ego, not in a negative way on the ego, but just helps them, right? They feel valued at that point.
So many great lessons in there, and thank you so much. Wondering if Lana had something to add up. Sorry, not to put you on the spot. If not, I had a question about partnerships and how that process went.
Yeah, partnerships on what, Robbie? On anything? Like,
Yeah, I guess I'm not too familiar with the geography, but I suppose, yeah, the neighboring municipality. Um,
yeah, it's, the way we took it, we literally went in with, no promises and just being honest. Like that's what you have to do, right? So like I stressed earlier, it was a very toxic relationship at first. Like there's some key adversaries that didn't get along. Like they were literally toxic for each other. So we separated them out and said, okay, well, you can't be on this committee. We'll report to you. One was on leadership, or one was a member of leadership. So we just reported out to her, but she wasn't in the day to day figuring out the logistics of it. And then when it was all said and done, everything was all cool after, right? Like, I mean, cooler heads prevailed, and it was literally a misunderstanding from both. And it was pretty crazy to see how that was what created the wedge, though, right? They're both very strong individuals that didn't want to back down. And we looked at, and one of the key things when we did that with the town is we separated it out. One of our first sessions, we got separated into two different areas of the room, and we did value statements. So what are our values in our area? So we all live in the same area. What's our values? We came back. I think there's 18 values. 14 of them were all the same. So right there, that was sort of the sort of catalyst to help move everything forward, because everyone's like, holy cow, we're not even that different. Like how is it that we don't communicate? And it was really, we had on the town side, we had people that were in their 70s right down to in their 30s on council that were like, what the heck, how do we not communicate more? And that sort of spawned how we approach things now. We know that we have shared values, and how do we work together to try and arrive at that. Same thing, we just updated our protocol agreement with the town and with the regional district, but we're waiting till the new year to sign when we can actually meet together.
Question. Hello, this is Lana. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah, I think what your community's done is awesome. I work with Indigenous Service Canada and in comprehensive community planning, and I think what you've done is fantastic for such a small, tiny community on Vancouver Island, and really, really looking forward to what's next for you in terms of planning and moving forward. But I have a question. Being such a small community, I imagine everybody in your community is probably involved in, all the economic development, either like in terms of employment and getting your community employed. So a lot of work involved. And so I imagine, you're also looking at employment opportunities for your community. And like you also mentioned, bringing back your culture and bringing culture into some of your activities. So I guess in terms of planning, and you said some of this is just getting the ball rolling and just probably just jumping in there, because you don't know what you don't know. So how did you get that ball rolling? Were you working with consultants? Did you guys have, some expertise that you were connecting with or linking with? So in terms of moving your plan forward into implementation, because there's always challenges with money and not knowing everything in terms of the process and proceeding into like feasibility, construction, that kind of thing. Yeah, a lot of balls going on. And how do you like settle that all down so that you can focus on step by step by step?
Thank you, Lana. Awesome to see a face to the name. I've seen your name on many correspondence, but pleasure to meet you. Honestly, I think you have to have a level head. I think for one, you have to be able to manage stress, because it can get very stressful, and you have to have the mannerisms to not let it get to you, right? And maybe as I age, I'm getting a bit more stressed, but that was one of the key elements, is to keep everything under control, keep cool. You know, you apply for things and guess what? You get rejected. That's life. You're not, and that the presentation makes like everything happen, like, oh, this happened, this happened. Oops, sorry. There was a lot of rejection in that too that I'm just not highlighting, right? So I mean, you have to stick to your guns. So one of the things, and you mentioned, yes, we do. We're somewhat fortunate. Um, those that want to work are able to work, but a lot of them don't work for the nation right now. They've left, and they're, you know, my daughter's in Diddy Dot working in the daycare. My other daughter was in Duncan doing working at a fast food restaurant because she's just out of high school. Um, what I've been trying to teach to my kids and preach to our community is come back when you know what you want to do, but you're always welcome to come back. And when we have other entry level jobs, CATSA, that's what I was saying. CATSA doesn't generate a lot of revenue, but what it does, I can say right now, we've had 8 members of our community have worked there in any shape and form in the last 4 years. So that summer job, and we're paying at least minimum wage. This year we paid $18 an hour to run a kayak place. Like, it was crazy because we couldn't get people. But that is a very key question, is how do you factor in what areas of expertise you're going to need, and what employment opportunities are available for your nation. I have one member right now who's going in the trades program, and he's in his 3rd month. I've got 3 different companies that are local that are doing excavating for us, and they all want him like yesterday. Like, he's got a job basically waiting for him when he's done. To form our biggest strength, I think, has been forming these partnerships that you highlighted, and weaning out. So when I first came on, we had different consultants. We've went through a few consultants now that and I won't bash them, it doesn't matter. We just had differences of opinion, but it's really responding. You have to gauge it. There was one company I really liked, but leadership in the community didn't like, so we had to part ways, and that's life. I will not keep a company if the community does not have a good relationship with them. Just because they have a good relationship with me, I'm not the one who's from the community. It's not my plan. Like I always said, it's my kids are from here. I'm from Hupacasath and Port Alberni. I need whoever we bring on needs to get along with the community and needs to get along with leadership. That's critical. And leadership is very, very reasonable. They put a lot of trust in people that work for us, and you know, it is a process and it is a challenge. You know, you hit it on the nail. You know, when we did CATSA as the launch into our waterfront, it was a lot of cash outlay, and we used some of our, not a whole lot, but we had some forestry revenues that we had. And you know, it's parting with money that could probably go elsewhere, but you know, you hit it on, you sort of luck out, right? You try and make sure everything's all settled. So do we have enough money for health? Do we have enough money for education? Then you sort of say, those are the 2 main areas that people focus on. Then you say, okay, we got this little bit here. And you sort of take that plunge. You almost have to. That's why I said in implementing your plan, I would say, you know, by all means, find all the funds you can through government funding, through partnerships, but be ready to invest your own capital too, right? You need to look inwards, and you know, it's the community's plan. You can't keep looking for, and I'm not meaning this in a derogatory sense, you can't keep looking for handouts. You have to own it. You know, the community, when they get community buy-in, that should be the cue to leadership that the community owns it. So by all means, you can start spending money on improving things. You know, I'm just trying to think outside the box. One of the things we're working on right now, we're learning, but we're doing leases to non-members that live right next to us. So now we're looking at, well, maybe we should lease our nation's houses on a lease system instead of a CP or anything, so that we can leverage that with a bank. I don't know if that's going to go. That's just a concept we have right now, because you know, we have members here. Well, it's everyone knows that almost, that housing on reserve is worth 0 because there's no equity in it. So why is it that I can do a lease to a non-member that lives literally 1 house over from me? Why couldn't I get a lease and structure it that way, so that when my roof leaks, even if I'm the dual income provider, my roof leaks, I'm going to abandon this house in 30 years because I'm not going to be able to afford to fix it up. So just trying to look at really creative things that are outside the box. Sometimes in a small community, you have a lot of time to think, and you have a lot of time to really think of creative solutions, right? I've worked for a community of 500 people, and honestly, I know everyone struggles, and unfortunately, you spend a lot of time trying to satisfy or correct their struggles as sort of a counselor as opposed to an ec dev person. But I think we'll all get there. I really do. I think there's silver linings on there. I think if everyone just sticks to a plan, I just can't help but keep stressing that your CCDP is really, it can be your really key guiding document. I know people don't believe in that sometimes, but if you do and they get the community to buy in and their participants, that's their plan. It's crazy. That's all we did. That's all I want to try and highlight is that we got to where we're at now by sticking to the plan and modifying it as we needed to, but communicating that. That's, like I said, it's not complex. We're I'm sure it's unique because we're so small, but I mean it's totally doable by anybody, I think. So
Yeah, clearly demonstrating the mobilization of that plan and the ownership community takes and what's possible. Just wanted to read out a comment from Rasika. Thank you so much for the presentation, Aaron. At Ts'ubaa-asatx, we always ensure an implementation plan is included from the beginning of any planning project. This can be refined as we go, but it is important to have a pragmatic approach. Building relationships, getting community buy-in and trust, building is key. An appropriate allocation of limited resources is crucial, both capital and operational budgets.
No, definitely. Awesome comment. I love that.
So we have just 2 more minutes left. Wondering if there's any other final comments or questions from anyone before we thank Aaron for his time and rejoin everyone for the final plenary. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for sharing this inspirational stories. And look forward to visiting Lake Cowichan.
Definitely, and I'm more than welcome to if there's another conference next year. I like to do this kind of things. I think it's important to start sharing successes, and I know as the few, I only go to a few workshops per year. I try and make sure that more on the ground here, but anything to motivate any other communities. I think communities supporting communities is what's going to get us all out of where we're at, and I think it's critical that we keep doing this. So even through Zoom, look, we still figured it out. So I think it's going to be. I can't wait to start meeting people in person again, hopefully next year. But yeah, you have my contacts. Everyone at Natsuman has my contacts. I'm more than willing to do this whenever I can, whenever the time allots. I think it's critical to get it out there to the masses. I really do. And when I started my working career with nations about 21 years ago, the whole thing was everyone kept everything guarded to their chest. Nations were like, oh no, that's our secret how to be successful. And I'm trying to bend that. I want everyone to know how to be successful. You don't need to hold everything so close to your chest. I understand why they did it at the time, but I think we can empower each other by doing stuff like this. So thank you everyone that was on here. I appreciate it. And like I said, if anyone reaches out that couldn't be here, if they had another process they had to go on, by all means, share my email. People can reach out randomly. I'll do everything I can to be in touch.